The soft glow of the gaslight above her workbench cast a warm circle on the parchment, illuminating the intricate dance of ink and nib. Clara hummed a tuneless melody, a quiet counterpoint to the distant cry of gulls and the rhythmic whisper of the ocean that was Oakhaven Point's constant lullaby. Her shop, Ink and Quill, was a haven of quiet artistry, nestled between Mrs. Gable's bustling bakery and the weathered gray stone of the old Maritime Museum. Inside, the air was a comforting blend of paper, wood, and the faint metallic scent of iron gall ink. Clara loved her corner of the world. Oakhaven Point was a place where time seemed to unfurl at a more gentle pace, where conversations drifted like the sea mist, and where the everyday held a quiet magic. She had arrived 3 years ago, a transplant from the frenetic energy of the city, seeking solace and a place where her hands, rather than her anxieties, could do the talking. She'd found it in the rhythmic strokes of her calligraphy pen, in the careful selection of handmade papers, and in the joy of crafting beauty for others. Her work today was for a local wedding, a set of bespoke invitations adorned with delicate illustrations of wildflowers found along the cliffs. Each letter was a small act of devotion, each flourish a whisper of elegance. Clara believed that words, when given the care they deserved, held immense power to comfort, to celebrate, to bind. She traced the curve of a capital AA, her brow furrowed in concentration, a stray strand of chestnut hair escaping her neat bun to tickle her cheek. She was a woman of quiet beauty herself, with thoughtful gray eyes that missed little, and a smile that, when it came, transformed her serious demeanor into something utterly radiant. The bell above the shop door chimed, a bright, surprising sound that made Clara jump slightly, her hand nearly smudging a carefully placed dot. She looked up, a soft blush rising to her cheeks, her heart quickening with the unexpected intrusion. Most of her customers were familiar faces, a gentle nod or a knowing smile usually preceding their entry. This man, however, was not familiar. He stood just inside the doorway, silhouetted against the late afternoon light, a tall, broad-shouldered figure, the scent of sea air and something subtly earthy, perhaps old wood or leather, wafted in with him. He removed a dark tweed cap, revealing a shock of dark, slightly unruly hair. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, swept over the shop, taking in the shelves laden with journals, the racks of fine pens, the display of wax seals, and finally settled on Clara. He had a strong, intelligent face, etched with a few lines around his eyes that hinted at time, spent squinting into the sun or contemplating complex thoughts. There was a quiet intensity about him, a stillness that suggested a man comfortable in his own company, yet not entirely aloof. He looked less like a tourist and more like someone who belonged, even if she hadn't seen him before. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly warm. "Is this Ink and Quill?" Clara found her voice, a little breathier than she intended. "Yes, it is. How can I help you?" She wiped a smudge of ink from her finger, suddenly hyper-aware of her flour-dusted apron and the slight disarray of her workspace. He took a step further into the shop, his gaze still exploring. "My name is Elias Thorne. I'm here for the lighthouse restoration project." Ah, the lighthouse. Oakhaven Point's iconic landmark, perched dramatically on the outermost cliff, had fallen into disrepair over the last decade. The news of its restoration had been the talk of the town for weeks, a beacon of hope for the local economy and a symbol of renewed pride. Clara had heard whispers of a new architect, a specialist in historical preservation, but she hadn't expected him to appear in her shop. "Of course," Clara said, finding her footing. "It's wonderful news about the lighthouse. The town is very excited." She gestured vaguely around her. "I'm Clara Finch, the proprietor, Doc." Elias offered a small, polite smile, and Clara noticed the crinkling at the corners of his eyes, softening his otherwise serious expression. "It's a magnificent structure, a real privilege to work on it." He paused, his gaze returning to her. "I was told, by Mrs. Gable actually, that you do exceptional work with custom lettering and design." Clara felt another blush creep up her neck. Mrs. Gable, the town's unofficial gossip queen and purveyor of the finest apple tarts, was a staunch supporter of local businesses and Clara's biggest fan. "Mrs. Gable is very kind," Clara murmured. "I do bespoke stationery, signage, illustration, whatever my clients need to make their words special." "Special," Elias repeated, a thoughtful note in his voice. Yes, that's precisely what I'm looking for. He moved closer to the counter, resting his hands lightly on the polished wood. His presence filled the small space in a way that was both grounding and subtly electric. The project is quite significant, and we're looking to create a sense of history and community around it. We'll need a variety of things. Formal invitations for the dedication ceremony, perhaps some interpretive signage for visitors, and he paused, searching for the right words. A beautifully crafted logbook, something that feels timeless, that respects the legacy of the lighthouse keepers who served there. Clara's heart gave a little flutter. This wasn't just a simple sign or a set of business cards. This was a commission that spoke to her soul. A legacy, a timeless feel, respecting history. These were the words that resonated deeply with her own artistic philosophy. A logbook, she repeated, her eyes lighting up. With hand-bound pages perhaps, and a cover that evokes the sea, and calligraphy that speaks of endurance and quiet vigil? She was already picturing it. Heavy cream paper. A leather cover embossed with a subtle lighthouse motif. Perhaps even some hand-drawn coastal illustrations. Elias watched her, a genuine smile now gracing his lips. Precisely, you understand. His gaze held hers for a moment, and Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the shop's gentle heating. There was an unspoken connection in that shared understanding, a recognition of passion for craft and history. I do, Clara said, her voice steadier now. I would be honored to work on this, Mr. Thorne. Elias, please, he corrected gently. And I'd be delighted, Clara. He leaned forward slightly. I have some preliminary sketches and ideas, but I'm not much of an artist myself. I can bring them by tomorrow, or perhaps you'd like to see the lighthouse itself. Get a feel for the place? The invitation hung in the air, unexpected and appealing. Clara rarely left her shop during working hours, her world revolving around the quiet rhythm of her craft. But the lighthouse was different. It was the soul of Oakhaven Point, a landmark she admired from afar, but had never truly explored up close. The lighthouse? She asked, a spark of excitement in her voice. That would be wonderful, Elias. To see it firsthand would really help me capture its essence. Excellent, he said, the smile widening. How about tomorrow morning? Say, 10 o'clock? I can meet you at the base of the path. 10 o'clock sounds perfect, Clara agreed, already imagining the bracing sea air, the ancient stones, the stories etched into its very foundations. She felt a lightness she hadn't realized she was missing, a quiet thrill of anticipation for something new and inspiring. Elias nodded, his gaze lingering for another moment before he straightened. Then I'll see you then, Clara. Thank you. He replaced his cap, gave her another brief, warm smile, and with a final soft chime of the bell, he was gone, leaving behind the lingering scent of sea and the distinct feeling that something interesting had just walked into her carefully ordered world. The distinct feeling that something interesting had just walked into her carefully ordered world. Clara stood by her workbench, her pen forgotten, a small, thoughtful smile playing on her lips. Elias Thorne, the lighthouse architect. He was intriguing. Reserved, yes, but with an underlying warmth that had shone through when they spoke of the project. And his eyes, they held a depth that suggested a rich inner life, a quiet intensity that mirrored her own. She spent the rest of the evening in a pleasant haze, her mind drifting from wedding invitations to lighthouse logbooks. She found herself sketching rough ideas, not for the wedding, but for the lighthouse. Swirling motifs of waves, strong, clean lines reflecting the structure, delicate script that spoke of maritime history. The quiet hum of the shop felt different now, charged with a subtle new energy. The next morning, Clara dressed with more care than usual. She chose a practical but pretty linen dress, a sturdy pair of walking boots, and wrapped a soft wool scarf around her neck, anticipating the sea breeze. She packed a small sketchbook and her favorite fountain pen, just in case inspiration struck. Leaving a note on her shop door, back by noon, exploring inspiration, she set off for the cliffs. The path to the lighthouse was well-trodden but steep, winding through gnarled, wind-swept trees and patches of hardy wildflowers. The air grew crisper with every step, carrying the invigorating tang of salt and damp earth. Below, the turquoise water crashed against the rocky shore, a constant, mesmerizing rhythm. As she rounded the final bend, the lighthouse loomed into view, grand and solitary against the vast expanse of the sky. It was more magnificent up close than she had imagined. The whitewashed stone, though weathered, still held an imposing dignity. The lantern room, scarred by years of storms, promised a spectacular view. Scaffolding now hugged its sides, a sign of the delicate work underway. Elias was already there, standing at the base of the lighthouse, talking to a burly man in work overalls. He spotted Clara approaching and offered a wave, a genuine smile lighting his face. He was dressed in practical work clothes today, sturdy trousers, a thick sweater, and the same tweed cap tied to you. He looked perfectly at home amidst the rugged landscape, a natural part of the scene. "Clara, good morning," he called out as she drew closer. "Right on time." "Good morning, Elias," she replied, a little breathless from the climb. She felt a surge of excitement, a pleasant flutter in her stomach, as she met his gaze. Up close, his eyes truly were the color of the sea, flecked with gray and green. "This is Liam," Elias introduced, gesturing to the other man. "Our lead foreman. Liam, this is Clara Finch, the artisan who'll be helping us with the project's aesthetic elements." Liam gave a curt nod and a friendly smile. "Heard good things about your shop, miss. Good to have some beauty brought into this old place." Clara returned his smile. "Thank you, Liam. It's an honor." Elias turned back to Clara. "Shall we start with a walk around the base? I can tell you a bit about the history we've uncovered during the initial assessments." "I'd love that," Clara said, pulling out her sketchbook. As they walked around the perimeter of the lighthouse, Elias spoke with a quiet passion, his voice carrying easily over the sound of the wind. He described the original builders, the challenges they faced, the lives of the early lighthouse keepers. He pointed out different types of stone, explained the architectural nuances, and shared anecdotes he'd gleaned from old records. Clara listened intently, sketching furiously. She captured the texture of the weathered stone, the play of light on the crumbling mortar, the defiant stance of the structure against the elements. She found herself fascinated not just by the architecture, but by the quiet dedication in Elias's voice, the way his eyes lit up when he spoke of preserving history. He wasn't just an architect, he was a storyteller, a guardian of the past. "This section here," Elias explained, tracing a line on the stone with his finger, "we believe dates back to the very first iteration of the light, almost 2 centuries ago. It's seen countless storms, guided thousands of ships. Imagine the stories these walls could tell." "I am," Clara murmured, sketching a particularly resilient patch of ivy clinging to the stone. "It's like each stone holds a memory." Elias paused, looking at her. "Exactly. That's what I want to capture in the logbook. Not just facts, but the spirit, the enduring watchfulness." They spent nearly an hour outside, the wind whipping Clara's hair around her face, the salt spray a refreshing kiss on her skin. She felt invigorated, inspired, and surprisingly comfortable in Elias's presence. There was a quiet synergy between them, a shared appreciation for the history unfolding before them. "Would you like to go inside?" Elias asked eventually, gesturing towards the heavy wooden door. "The interior is still quite a mess, of course, but you can get a sense of the scale." Clara's eyes widened. "Oh yes, please." Inside, the air was cooler, still, and held the damp, earthy scent of old stone and sea. The circular walls soared upwards, a dizzying spiral of worn steps and narrow windows. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light filtering through the grimy panes. It was a place of ghosts and echoes, a testament to solitary vigilance. "The keepers lived in the attached cottage," Elias explained, his voice hushed in the cavernous space. "But they spent much of their time up in the lantern room, maintaining the light, keeping watch." He pointed upwards. "We'll be restoring the original ironwork of the staircase, replacing damaged steps, and then, of course, the lantern room itself is a complete overhaul." Clara looked up, her imagination soaring. She could almost hear the footsteps of the long-gone keepers, feel the chill of the night watches, see the beams sweeping across the dark, turbulent sea. This place held a profound sense of purpose, of quiet heroism. "It's breathtaking," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "So much history." Elias moved closer, his shoulder brushing hers as they both looked up. "It is, and it deserves to be respected, to be brought back to life in a way that honors its past while securing its future." Clara turned to him, her gray eyes reflecting the dim light. I think I understand exactly what you mean. What you're aiming for." He met her gaze, and for a moment, the world outside, the crashing waves, the scaffolding, the dust, seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them in the heart of the ancient lighthouse, a shared understanding passing between them like a silent current. There was a depth in his eyes she hadn't noticed before, a quiet vulnerability that resonated with something similar within her. "I think you do too, Clara," he said softly, his voice a little lower than before. A small smile played on his lips, a gentle warmth in his eyes. "That's why I knew Mrs. Gable was right about you." Clara felt a warmth bloom in her chest, a pleasant flush spreading across her cheeks. The compliment, delivered with such sincerity, felt like a small, precious gift. She realized, with a jolt, that she was enjoying his company far more than she'd anticipated. The quiet, focused architect had a captivating way of seeing the world, and a profound respect for the beauty of history. "Thank you, Elias," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She looked down at her sketchbook, flipping through the pages she'd filled with quick, expressive lines. "I have so many ideas already. For the logbook, for the signage, a subtle elegance, a strength that reflects the lighthouse itself." "I have no doubt," he said, his voice back to its usual calm timbre. He stepped back slightly, breaking the intimate moment but leaving a pleasant, lingering warmth. "I'll leave you to sketch if you like. I have a few things to discuss with Liam, but I'll be nearby if you have any questions." "Thank you," Clara replied, already turning back to the curved walls, her mind buzzing with inspiration. She knew this project would be a labor of love, a chance to pour her heart and skill into something truly meaningful. And perhaps, just perhaps, it would be a chance to explore a new kind of connection as well, one that had walked into her quiet life with the scent of sea and old wood, and eyes the color of a stormy, beautiful sea. She sketched for another hour, losing herself in the textures and shadows of the lighthouse. When she finally emerged, blinking in the bright sunlight, Elias was waiting for her near the path. "All done?" he asked, his hands tucked into his pockets. "For now," Clara said, closing her sketchbook with a satisfying thud. "I have so much to work with. Thank you for the tour, Elias. It was truly inspiring." "The pleasure was mine," he replied, his gaze warm. "It's always good to share this place with someone who appreciates it." He walked with her back down the path, the conversation flowing easily between them. They talked about Oakhaven Point, its history, its quirky residents. Elias shared a little about his own work, his passion for preserving historical structures across the country, and the nomadic nature of his life. Clara, in turn, spoke of her journey from the city, her love for her craft, and the peace she'd found by the sea. By the time they reached the fork in the path, one leading to her shop, the other back towards the town square where Elias was likely staying, Clara felt a pang of reluctance for their conversation to end. "Well," Elias said, stopping and turning to face her, "I'll look forward to seeing what you come up with. No rush, of course, but I'm eager. I'll have some initial concepts ready for you by the end of the week," Clara promised, a newfound energy humming within her. "Thank you again, Elias." "Good day, Clara," he said, his smile gentle. He lingered for a moment, his eyes holding hers, before he turned and headed towards the square. Clara watched him go, a soft smile on her lips. The sea breeze felt exhilarating, the sun warm on her face. Her sketchbook felt heavy and full of potential. As she walked back to ink and quill, her heart felt light, imbued with the quiet excitement of new beginnings. The Lighthouse Project was more than just a commission. It felt like an invitation. An invitation to create, to connect, and perhaps, to discover something wonderful, whispering just under the surface of her quiet, artistic life. She had a feeling that Elias Thorne, the man who spoke of history with such quiet reverence, was going to play a much larger part in the story of Oakhaven Point than just restoring its lighthouse, and a much larger part in her own story, too. The thought of Elias Thorne, a quiet, steady current beneath the surface of her burgeoning professional excitement, lingered with Clara as she finalized her plans for the journey to Oakhaven Point. The Lighthouse Project wasn't just a job, it was an invitation, as she'd felt, and now, it felt like an adventure she hadn't known she was waiting for. She packed her most trusted sketchbooks, a fresh set of charcoal, and her comfortable walking boots, anticipating days spent scaling scaffolding and nights lost in the dance of light and shadow on paper. The drive to Oakhaven Point was a winding embrace of coastal beauty. Rolling green hills gave way to craggy cliffs, and the scent of pine forest mingled with the sharp, clean tang of salt. As her car descended into the small, picturesque town nestled along a crescent bay, Clara felt an immediate sense of belonging. Weather-beaten fishing boats bobbed gently in the harbor, their masts a delicate tracery against the vast expanse of sky. Quaint cottages, painted in hues of seafoam green, oyster white, and deep indigo, lined cobblestone streets. A welcoming sign, hand-painted and weathered, declared, "Oak Haven Point, where the land meets the light." She found the lighthouse easily, its tall, elegant structure a beacon on the outermost bluff. It stood proud but neglected, a silent sentinel awaiting its rebirth. The air around it hummed with the promise of change, and a faint, almost imperceptible warmth settled in Clara's chest. Elias was already there, just as she'd imagined he might be. He was standing near the base of the lighthouse, a structural diagram unfurled in his hands, his brow furrowed in concentration. The late afternoon sun caught the silver in his dark hair, giving him an almost ethereal glow against the rugged backdrop of the stone tower. He looked up as her car crunched on the gravel, and a slow, warm smile spread across his face, easing the lines of his thoughtful expression. "Clara," he said, his voice a low, melodic rumble that seemed to harmonize with the distant crash of waves. "You're here. Welcome to Oak Haven Point." Clara felt a blush creep up her neck, a surprising reaction for someone usually so composed. "Elias, it's even more beautiful than I imagined. The lighthouse, it has such character." She gestured towards the tower, feeling an immediate artistic connection. "It does," he agreed, folding the diagram and tucking it under his arm. "Every stone tells a story. And every story, I believe, deserves to be heard, to be seen again." He led her closer to the base, his presence calm and reassuring. "I was just doing a final survey of the exterior masonry before the scaffolding goes up next week. It's in better shape than some, but there are areas that require careful attention." Clara pulled out her small sketch pad and charcoal, her fingers itching to capture the interplay of light and shadow on the time-worn stone. "I can see that. The patina is incredible. I want to make sure my designs honor that history, enhance it, rather than just covering it up." "Precisely my thought," Elias said, his eyes meeting hers, a shared understanding passing between them. "I believe the interior requires the same reverence. The original lantern room, for instance, was quite unique. I have some old photographs, blueprints even, that might interest you." They spent the next hour walking around the lighthouse, Elias pointing out structural details, sharing anecdotes about its past keepers, and discussing the intricate dance of preservation and modernization. Clara sketched furiously, her mind already buzzing with ideas for the interior lighting, the interpretive displays, the way the light from the restored lantern would eventually sweep across the water. She found herself asking questions not just about the technical aspects, but about the feeling of the place, the emotions it evoked. Elias answered with a depth of feeling that matched her own. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender, Elias suggested, "You must be tired from your drive? Have you found a place to stay yet?" "I booked a small cottage down near the harbor," Clara replied, feeling a pleasant exhaustion settle over her. "It looks charming online." "The Captain's Rest," he surmised with a knowing smile. "It's a lovely spot. My family has owned it for generations, though we rent it out now. My great-aunt Millie used to live there. She was quite the character." Clara's eyebrows rose slightly. "You own it? What a coincidence." "Oak Haven Point is full of them," Elias chuckled softly. "Or perhaps fewer coincidences than we imagine, and more paths simply crossing as they were always meant to." His gaze was steady, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibility. He offered to walk her to the cottage, and as they strolled through the quiet streets, illuminated now by the soft glow of streetlights and the first stars, Clara felt an unexpected sense of peace. Elias pointed out local landmarks, a tiny bookstore, a bustling bakery, a diner that served the best clam chowder. He spoke of the community with a quiet affection that resonated deeply with Clara, who had always sought connection but rarely found it outside her art. The Captain's Rest was indeed charming. A small whitewashed cottage with blue trim, a window box spilling over with petunias, and a welcoming porch swing. Inside, it was cozy and filled with the scent of sea air and old wood. "Thank you, Elias," Clara said, turning to him at the doorway. "For the tour, and for the welcome. I'm truly excited to be here." "The pleasure is all mine, Clara," he responded, his eyes holding hers for a beat longer than strictly necessary. "Get some rest. We have a lot of light to bring back to that old tower." The following day settled into a comfortable rhythm. Clara established her temporary studio in the cottage's sunroom, its large windows overlooking the harbor. She spread out her blueprints, her historical photographs, and her sketchbooks, immersing herself in the lighthouse's story. She spent hours walking the Oakhaven Point coastline, letting the wild beauty of the landscape inspire her. She sketched the intricate patterns of tidal pools, the graceful flight of gulls, the textures of weathered rock and ancient timber. She found herself incorporating elements of the natural world into her designs for the lighthouse's interior, the subtle greens and blues of the ocean reflected in textile choices, the rugged strength of the stone inspiring interpretive displays that felt organic and timeless. Elias became a constant welcome presence. He would often stop by her studio in the late afternoon, bringing her coffee from the local cafe, or a freshly baked scone from the Oakhaven bakery, still warm in its paper bag. They would discuss the day's progress on the structural repairs or delve into the minutiae of historical preservation. He had an uncanny ability to anticipate her questions, offering insights that always enriched her artistic vision. He spoke of the generations of Thorne family members who had lived and worked in Oakhaven, weaving a rich tapestry of local history that Clara found utterly captivating. One blustery afternoon, a sudden squall swept over Oakhaven Point, sending sheets of rain lashing against Clara's windows. She found herself staring out at the turbulent sea, a mug of steaming tea clutched in her hands, her thoughts drifting to the lighthouse standing steadfast against the storm. A knock on her door startled her. It was Elias, rain slicking his dark hair, a concerned look on his face. "I saw the storm rolling in," he explained, holding up a paper bag. "Thought you might appreciate some supper. The Oakhaven Diner's clam chowder is legendary on days like this." Clara's heart warmed. "Elias, that's incredibly thoughtful. Please, come in." They sat at her small kitchen table, the storm raging outside creating a cozy intimacy within the cottage. The clam chowder was indeed delicious, rich and creamy, warming her from the inside out. They talked about the storm, about the resilience of the old lighthouse, and then, slowly, their conversation drifted to more personal shores. "It's funny," Clara began, stirring her tea. "I've always been drawn to places like Oakhaven Point, places with history with a sense of enduring strength, but I've never really felt rooted anywhere myself. My work often takes me to different cities, different projects." Elias nodded, listening intently. "The life of an artist, always seeking new inspiration. But even nomadic souls need a harbor, don't they?" Clara smiled faintly. "I suppose so. My parents were academics, always moving for research grants. I grew up packing boxes, learning to say goodbye. It taught me independence, but also perhaps a certain detachment." "Detachment can be a form of self-preservation," Elias observed gently. "But it can also keep us from truly connecting." He paused, his gaze thoughtful. "My family has been in Oakhaven for centuries. It's in my blood, this place. I left once for university, but I always knew I'd come back. There's a responsibility, a deep satisfaction in protecting what endures." "That's beautiful," Clara said softly, truly meaning it. "I admire that, to have such a clear sense of purpose, of belonging." She looked out at the churning sea, then back at Elias, a flicker of something she couldn't quite name passing between them. I think I'm starting to understand what that feels like a little, being here." The storm gradually subsided, leaving behind a world washed clean, the air tasting of ozone and salt. Elias stayed until the last remnants of twilight faded, and as he stood to leave, a comfortable silence settled between them. "Thank you, Elias," Clara said, walking him to the door. "For the chowder and the company. It meant a lot." He turned, his hand resting lightly on the doorframe. "Anytime, Clara. It was a pleasure." His eyes, dark and deep, held hers for a long moment, a silent conversation unfolding in the quiet space between them. Clara felt a flutter in her chest, a warmth spreading through her limbs that had nothing to do with the earlier tea or chowder. She watched him walk away, his silhouette disappearing into the moonlit street, and found herself wishing he hadn't left so soon. Over the next few weeks, the lighthouse project moved into high gear. Scaffolding began to rise around the tower, a delicate metal skeleton encasing its robust form. Clara's designs for the interior began to take shape, moving from concept sketches to detailed renderings. She worked closely with Elias, consulting him on everything from the historical accuracy of a particular paint color to the structural implications of an exhibition display. Their collaboration was seamless, a harmonious blend of his deep historical knowledge and her innovative artistic vision. One morning, Elias called her to the lighthouse with an unusual urgency in his voice. "Clara, you need to see this. We've made a discovery." She arrived to find him standing in what would eventually become the main interpretive gallery, a wide space at the base of the tower. He was pointing to a section of the wall where a layer of plaster had been carefully removed. Beneath it, a series of faded, intricate murals had been revealed. They depicted scenes of Oakhaven's maritime history, whaling ships battling stormy seas, fishermen mending nets on the docks, the lighthouse itself, in its original pristine glory, casting its benevolent beam. Clara gasped, her breath catching in her throat. "Oh, Elias, these are incredible. Why were they covered up?" "We believe they were painted by one of the early lighthouse keepers, a man named Thomas Finch, in the late 1800s, Elias explained, his voice hushed with reverence. His journals mention a secret project to beautify the tower's interior. When the lighthouse was electrified in the 1930s, the walls were replastered and painted over in a more modern style. These have been hidden for nearly a century. Clara ran a gloved hand lightly over the delicate surface of a mural depicting a schooner with billowing sails. "They're so fragile. We have to preserve them. This changes everything for the interior design." Elias looked at her, a profound trust in his gaze. "I knew you'd understand. I've already contacted a conservation specialist. But the question is, how do we incorporate them into your vision? How do we make them accessible, tell their story, without overwhelming them or compromising the overall flow?" Clara's mind raced, her artistic instincts kicking in. "We make them the centerpiece," she declared, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We use them as the primary narrative. Imagine the story of Oakhaven, told through the eyes of one of its keepers. We can create subtle lighting that highlights them, interpretive panels that explain their history, their artist. The rest of the gallery can be designed to complement, to recede, to allow these to sing." Elias smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. "That's brilliant, Clara. Absolutely brilliant. I had a feeling you'd find a way." They spent the rest of the day poring over the murals, discussing preservation techniques, and brainstorming design concepts. There was a palpable energy between them, a shared passion that felt exhilarating and deeply intimate. Clara felt an incredible sense of fulfillment, not just in her work, but in the shared journey with Elias. He saw her, truly saw her, not just as an artist, but as a kindred spirit. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and soft purples, Elias walked Clara back to her cottage. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint, sweet scent of honeysuckle. "Today was extraordinary, Elias," Clara said, feeling a contented warmth settle over her. "Thank you for trusting me with something so precious." "There was never any doubt," he replied, his voice soft. "Your respect for history, your vision, it's rare, Clara, and deeply inspiring." They stopped at her gate, the silence stretching pleasantly between them. Elias reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was light, fleeting, yet it sent a shiver down Clara's spine, a delicious awareness of his proximity. I should go," Elias murmured, his eyes searching hers in the dim light. "Long day tomorrow." "Yes," Clara whispered, her voice a little breathy. "Of course." He lingered for another moment, his gaze unwavering, and Clara felt an almost irresistible urge to lean in, to close the small distance between them. But he simply nodded, a faint, wistful smile playing on his lips, and then turned to walk away. Clara watched him go, her hand rising instinctively to her cheek where his fingers had rested. The air still tingled with his touch, with the unspoken words that hung between them. She stepped inside her cottage, her heart thrumming with a quiet exhilaration. The murals, the lighthouse, the enduring beauty of Oakhaven Point, all of it felt intertwined with Elias Thorne. He was becoming more than just a client, more than a collaborator. He was becoming a constant presence in her thoughts, a quiet light guiding her forward, whispering of a connection that felt as ancient and as profound as the lighthouse itself. And Clara, for the first time in a long time, felt truly, wonderfully, and exhilaratingly alive. The story of Oakhaven Point was unfolding, and she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that her own story was just beginning to truly shine. The days that followed were painted with a new kind of light, brighter and softer than any Clara had known before. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of salt and pine, but now, mixed with it, was a subtle, exhilarating fragrance of anticipation. Elias became a fixture in her routine, his presence as comforting and reliable as the tides. Their collaboration on the Oakhaven Point Lighthouse project deepened, transitioning from professional discussions to shared moments of quiet understanding, punctuated by laughter and discoveries. They spent hours poring over old blueprints and photographs in the small, sun-drenched office Clara had set up in her cottage, the space slowly transforming into a hub of historical investigation. Elias, with his architect's eye for detail, would point out nuances she'd missed, while Clara, with her historian's intuition, would unearth stories hidden within the margins of faded documents. He had an uncanny ability to make even the most mundane task feel infused with purpose, whether it was sifting through dusty archives or simply discussing the best way to restore a corroded iron railing. One blustery afternoon, they were examining an intricate drawing of the original lantern room mechanism. Elias leaned close, his arm brushing hers as he traced a delicate line on the paper. A jolt, soft but undeniable, passed between them. Clara's breath hitched, and she subtly pulled back, her cheeks warming. Elias, seemingly oblivious, continued, "The ingenuity of these early engineers. It's humbling, isn't it? Building something so robust, yet so elegant, to withstand the fury of the sea." His voice was a low rumble, a soothing counterpoint to the wind howling outside. Clara cleared her throat, her gaze fixed on the drawing, though her mind was still replaying the fleeting contact. "Indeed," she managed, her voice a little breathy. "They built with a sense of permanence, a belief in the endurance of light." She risked a glance at him, and found his eyes already on her, a soft, unreadable expression in their depths. The moment stretched, thick with unspoken thoughts, until Elias gently cleared his throat and moved on to another section of the blueprint. The air between them, however, remained charged, humming with a new, exquisite awareness. As the weeks unfolded, their meetings extended beyond the confines of work. Elias began bringing her coffee in the mornings, a rich, dark roast he claimed was brewed to fuel genius. He'd appear at her door just as dawn was breaking, the rising sun painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, and they would sit on her small porch, sipping their mugs in companionable silence, watching the waves crash against the shore. Sometimes, he'd bring a freshly baked scone from the village bakery, its sweetness a delightful surprise. Clara, who usually retreated into her solitude, found herself looking forward to these quiet beginnings, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the hot coffee. One Saturday, Elias suggested they take a break from the archives and explore some of the more hidden historical sites around Oakhaven Point. "There are old fishing shacks down by the southern cove," he explained, "and a forgotten cemetery overlooking the bluffs. Sometimes, seeing the context, the lives lived around the lighthouse, helps inform the restoration." Clara readily agreed. It felt less like a research trip and more like an adventure, a shared exploration of a place she was only just beginning to truly know. The hike was invigorating. The path wound through ancient, twisted pines, their branches gnarled by the persistent sea wind, before opening up to breathtaking vistas of the churning ocean. Elias moved with an easy grace, always mindful of her, extending a hand over rocky patches, pointing out interesting geological formations. He spoke of his childhood, growing up in a bustling city, of his fascination with structures, and how they told stories of human endeavor. He confessed a quiet passion for old maps, for the way they captured a fleeting moment in time, much like Clara's love for historical documents. Clara, in turn, found herself opening up, sharing anecdotes from her own past. Her early days as a researcher, the quiet satisfaction of unearthing a forgotten truth. Even the bittersweet memories of her grandmother, whose love for history had first sparked Clara's own. She spoke of the comfort she found in the solitude of Oakhaven, a place where the past felt tangible, a constant presence. But as she spoke, she realized that the solitude, once a balm, now felt less essential, more like a space waiting to be filled. Filled, perhaps, by the very person walking beside her. They found the forgotten cemetery nestled on a grassy knoll, gravestones weathered and tilting, some almost swallowed by the earth. Elias paused before a particularly ancient stone, its inscription almost illegible. "Imagine the lives lived here," he murmured, his voice hushed. "The hopes, the struggles, the quiet joys, each one a story, lost to time, but not entirely forgotten if we remember to look. Clara felt a profound connection to his words. That's why I do what I do, she said softly, her gaze sweeping over the silent markers. To give voice to those stories, to ensure that the light of their existence continues to shine, even if faintly. Elias turned to her, his eyes warm with understanding. And you do it beautifully, Clara. You have a rare gift for seeing the soul of a place, the heart of a history. His compliment settled over her like a warm blanket, a deep, resonant comfort that went beyond mere flattery. As they made their way back, the sun beginning its descent, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, Clara felt a lightness in her step she hadn't experienced in years. Elias was easy to be with, his presence both stimulating and calming. He challenged her intellectually, yet offered a profound sense of peace. He made her laugh, genuinely, a sound that felt unfamiliar but welcome in her own ears. One evening, after another long day of work at the lighthouse, scrutinizing the intricate patterns of the original Fresnel lens, Elias lingered. The air was cool, and the first stars were beginning to prick the darkening sky. "Clara," he began, his voice a little hesitant, "I was thinking of making a proper dinner tonight. Nothing fancy, just a home-cooked meal. Would you perhaps join me?" He gestured vaguely towards his own cottage, a comfortable-looking place nestled a little further down the path from hers. Clara's heart fluttered. This was a step beyond their usual coffee or shared work. This was an invitation into his personal space, a gesture of intimacy. I would like that very much, Elias," she replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips. "Is there anything I can bring?" "Just yourself," he said, his own smile soft and reassuring. "And perhaps a good story about Oak Haven, if you have one to spare." She arrived at his cottage an hour later, a small bottle of local elderflower cordial in hand, a quiet offering. The scent of garlic and herbs wafted from his kitchen, mingled with the subtle aroma of the sea air. His cottage was warm and inviting, a comfortable blend of modern practicality and inherited charm. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with weighty tomes on architecture, but also novels and collections of poetry. A worn leather armchair sat by a small fireplace, and a vase of wildflowers, freshly picked, adorned his dining table. Elias, apron-clad, greeted her with a disarming smile. "Welcome, Clara. Make yourself at home." He poured them each a glass of wine, a crisp white that complemented the evening. As he put the finishing touches on a delectable seafood pasta, they talked, not about the lighthouse, but about themselves. He spoke of his family, his two sisters who were both artists, his parents who had instilled in him a love for beauty and structure. He admitted to a secret fondness for old jazz records, and a lifelong dream of designing a building that would truly merge with its natural environment. Clara found herself sharing more freely than she ever had, confessing her quiet fears of professional stagnation, her longing for a deeper connection after years spent in academic solitude. "I sometimes worried I was becoming as fixed in time as the histories I studied," she admitted, a wry smile playing on her lips. Elias paused, setting down a serving spoon. He looked at her, his gaze steady and kind. "You, Clara? Never. You have a light about you, a curiosity that keeps you constantly moving forward, even when you're looking back. And I think," he added, his voice lowering, "that light is only growing brighter." His words resonated deep within her, a beautiful echo of her own recent realizations. The dinner was exquisite, the conversation even more so. They lingered over coffee, the soft glow of a lamp illuminating their faces, the silence between them no longer empty, but rich with shared understanding. As the evening drew to a close, Elias walked her back to her cottage, the moon casting a silver path on the water. At her door, they paused. The air was cool, carrying the sound of distant waves. "Thank you, Elias," Clara said, her voice soft. "It was a wonderful evening, more than wonderful." He smiled, a genuine open smile that reached his eyes. "The pleasure was all mine, Clara. Truly." He hesitated, then reached out, gently taking her hand. His touch was warm, reassuring, sending a delicious shiver up her arm. "Good night, Clara." "Good night, Elias," she whispered, her gaze locked with his. For a moment she thought he might lean in, might bridge the small distance between them. Her heart hammered a hopeful rhythm against her ribs. But he simply squeezed her hand, a tender, lingering touch, and then released it, stepping back. She watched him walk away, his silhouette receding into the moonlit darkness, a quiet sigh escaping her lips. The almost touch, the lingering warmth of his hand, left a sweet ache in her chest. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that this was just the beginning. Their bond continued to deepen, intertwined with the steady progress of the lighthouse restoration. The old structure, once a symbol of Clara's isolated work, was slowly becoming a testament to their shared purpose, a beacon of their growing connection. They spent countless hours within its sturdy stone walls, Elias meticulously assessing structural integrity, Clara meticulously documenting every detail of its past. He consulted her on historical accuracy for the proposed repairs, and she found herself offering opinions on aesthetic choices, her historian's eye now appreciating the functional beauty of his architectural vision. One particularly challenging day, they encountered a significant setback. A section of the original ironwork in the lantern room, thought to be sound, turned out to be severely compromised by hidden corrosion, requiring a more extensive and costly repair than initially anticipated. Clara felt a surge of familiar anxiety, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. "This could set us back months, Elias," she said, her voice tinged with dismay, staring at the crumbling metal. "And the budget?" Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Hey," he said gently, his touch a steadying anchor. "We'll figure it out. This isn't the first surprise a century-old structure has thrown at me, and it won't be the last. We'll reassess, find an alternative, or lobby for additional funds. We're a team, remember." His unwavering optimism and calm resolve were a balm to her worries. Together, they spent the next few days brainstorming solutions, contacting specialists, and meticulously revising their plans. Elias worked tirelessly, his dedication infectious. Clara found herself drawing strength from his unwavering belief, not just in the project, but in their ability to overcome obstacles together. It was during these moments of shared challenge that she truly understood the depth of his character, his resilience, his patience, and his quiet strength. One evening, after finally finding a viable, albeit more complex, solution for the ironwork, they stood in the lantern room, the setting sun casting long shadows through the bare windows. The air was still, filled with a sense of quiet triumph. "We did it," Clara murmured, a tired but happy smile on her face. "We really did it." Elias turned to her, his eyes reflecting the warm glow of the fading light. "We did," he agreed, his voice soft. He reached out, his hand gently brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering for a fraction of a second against her cheek. The touch was feather-light, yet it sent a wave of warmth through her, a blush rising to her skin. His gaze held hers, an unspoken question, a tender longing passing between them. Clara's heart pounded a frantic rhythm. She wanted to lean into his touch, to close the small distance between them, to finally articulate the swirling emotions that had taken root in her soul. But a lifetime of guardedness, of retreating into the safety of her intellect, held her back. She simply met his gaze, her own eyes wide with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Elias's hand slowly dropped, the moment passing, leaving behind a bittersweet echo. He cleared his throat. "It's getting late. We should head back." His voice was a little rougher than usual. As they walked down the winding stairs, Clara felt a quiet regret. She knew she was holding back, a part of her still afraid to fully embrace this burgeoning connection. Yet the longing was undeniable, a powerful undercurrent that pulled her towards him. The following weeks were a delicate dance of anticipation and quiet yearning. They continued their work, their conversations still flowing easily. But now, beneath the surface, there was a heightened awareness, a palpable tension. Elias maintained his gentle, steady presence, never pushing, always respectful of her space, but his eyes held a constant warmth whenever they met hers. Clara found herself thinking of him constantly. His smile, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the comforting sound of his laughter. She started making small changes to her cottage, buying fresh flowers, baking bread, simple acts of domesticity she hadn't bothered with in years, as if unconsciously preparing her life for a brighter, fuller future. She even started leaving her studio door ajar more often, a silent invitation for him to linger, to step further into her world. One particularly clear night after a delicious home-cooked meal at her cottage, this time, she had insisted on cooking for him, a nervous but joyful endeavor. They found themselves on her porch again, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars emerge in the inky blackness. The air was crisp, and the distant sound of the lighthouse foghorn, a mournful but comforting call, carried on the wind. "Look," Elias said softly, pointing to the heavens. "The Milky Way. You can see it so clearly here, away from all the city lights." Clara gazed up, marveling at the sheer expanse of the universe. "It's humbling, isn't it?" she murmured. "To think of all that vastness, and yet, here we are, two small beings on a tiny planet." She turned her head, looking at Elias, his profile illuminated by the faint starlight. "And to think of all the chances, all the paths that led us here, to this moment, to Oakhaven Point." He turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting hers, dark and profound in the dim light. "I believe some paths are meant to cross, Clara," he said, his voice a low, tender whisper. "Some connections are simply meant to be." Clara's breath caught in her throat. His words were a mirror to her own deepest feelings, a gentle confirmation of the truth her heart had been whispering for weeks. The air between them thrummed, thick with unspoken emotion, with the weight of all the moments they had shared, all the unspoken longing. This time, she didn't pull away. This time she leaned in, just slightly, her gaze unwavering. She saw the question in his eyes, the hope, the tender uncertainty. And in that moment, under the vast, silent canvas of a million stars, Clara knew, with absolute certainty, that she was ready to answer. Her own story, intertwined with the enduring light of Oakhaven Point and the quiet strength of Elias, was truly, exhilaratingly, just beginning to shine. The path ahead was still unfolding, full of unknown wonders, but for the first time in a very long time, Clara wasn't afraid to walk it. She was ready to step into the light, hand in hand, heart to heart. The silence that followed Clara's internal declaration was not empty, but full, brimming with unspoken truths and the gentle hum of the universe. Elias, his gaze unwavering, seemed to read the very shift in her soul. He reached out, his warm hand finding hers, his thumb tracing the delicate pulse at her wrist. "Clara," he began, his voice a low rumble, barely above a whisper, yet resonating with a power that vibrated through her. "You've brought a light to Oakhaven Point I didn't know was missing. A light to I may." He paused, his eyes searching hers, a vulnerability in their depths that stole her breath. I've always believed in the enduring power of this place, the steadfastness of the light. But I've learned, since you arrived, that even the most unwavering light needs a partner, a reflection to truly shine." He knelt then, slowly, gracefully, his hand never leaving hers. From the pocket of his worn jacket, he drew a small, velvet-covered box. The moonlight caught the silver clasp, making it gleam. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs, a wild, joyful drumbeat. "Clara Hawthorne," he said, his voice now firm, laced with an emotion so pure it brought tears to her eyes. "Will you stay? Not just at Oakhaven Point, but with me? Will you be my partner, my reflection, my light, my wife, my wife?" The question hung in the cool night air, weighted with history, hope, and a promise as vast as the sea stretching out before them. Clara didn't hesitate. The answer had formed in her heart long before the words left his lips. "Yes," she breathed, the single word a sacred vow, a release of fears she hadn't even realized she still held. "Oh, Elias, yes." A relieved smile broke across his face, transforming his features, making him look younger, impossibly handsome. He opened the box, revealing a ring unlike any she had ever seen. It wasn't a glittering diamond, but a simple, elegant band of tarnished silver, set with a single, luminous piece of sea glass, the color of the deepest ocean on a clear day, polished smooth by countless tides. It was perfect. It was Oakhaven Point. It was them. He slipped it onto her finger, and it fit as though it had always belonged there. Then he rose, pulling her into his arms, and kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of salt and starlight, of long-held longing and new beginnings. A kiss that promised forever, not as a constraint, but as an endless horizon they would explore together. Way. The morning after was bathed in the soft, rosy glow of a sunrise that seemed to celebrate their new chapter. Clara woke in Elias's arms, the sea glass ring a cool, comforting weight on her finger. The view from his bedroom window, overlooking the vast expanse of the ocean and the quaint cluster of Oakhaven Point, had never looked more like home. News of their engagement spread through the small community with the speed of a whisper on the wind. Mrs. Gable, of course, was the first to offer her congratulations, her eyes twinkling with a knowing satisfaction. "Took you long enough, you two," she'd chuckled, pressing a batch of her famous blueberry scones into Clara's hands. Even gruff old Captain Davies offered a rare, toothless grin and a hearty slap on Elias's back. Life with Elias settled into a rhythm that Clara found surprisingly fulfilling. Her nomadic spirit, once a restless current, now flowed into the deep, steady pool of Oakhaven Point. She found new inspiration everywhere. The ever-changing moods of the sea, the weathered faces of the fishermen, the vibrant hues of the wildflowers clinging to the cliffs, all became subjects for her canvas. She set up a more permanent studio in the sunniest room of Elias's keeper's cottage, the sea breeze carrying the scent of salt and paint. Elias, in turn, began to share more of his world with her. He taught her the intricate workings of the lighthouse, the history of its powerful Fresnel lens, the stories of his ancestors who had kept the light before him. He spoke of his parents, of his younger sister, lost too soon to the unpredictable sea. Clara listened, her heart aching for his past losses, but also swelling with love for his quiet strength. She saw how the light wasn't just a duty, but a living memorial, a promise to those head lost that their legacy would endure. And now, she was part of that legacy, not replacing what was lost, but adding a new, vibrant chapter. They established their own routines: morning coffee on the porch, watching the fishing boats depart, shared meals cooked with fresh local produce, long walks along the rugged coastline, Elias pointing out hidden coves and unique rock formations. And every evening, they would watch the light ignite, a beacon of their shared future, a constant reminder of the unwavering love they had found. Clara, once so fearful of being tied down, discovered that true freedom wasn't about endless movement, but about finding a place where her heart could finally rest, knowing it was seen, cherished, and loved. Her art, far from being stifled, flourished. It became richer, infused with the deep roots she was growing. She painted the lighthouse in all its majestic glory, the fierce beauty of the storms, the gentle shimmer of moonlight on the waves. Her work began to gain local recognition, her vibrant canvases breathing new life into the familiar landscapes of Oakhaven Point. Then, an unexpected email arrived, a digital whisper from her old life. It was an invitation from a prestigious gallery in New York City, a contact she'd made years ago. They had seen her recent online portfolio, specifically her Oakhaven Point series, and were captivated. They wanted to feature her work in a solo exhibition, an opportunity that had once been her ultimate dream. Clara stared at the screen, a strange mix of exhilaration and unease swirling within her. This was it. The big break, the validation she had chased for so long. But as she read the words, New York City, international exposure, a global audience, a faint dissonance echoed in her heart. She showed the email to Elias that evening, her voice a little tremulous as she explained the magnitude of the offer. He listened patiently, his gaze fixed on her face, not on the screen. "Clara," he said softly when she finished, "this is incredible. This is what you've worked for, isn't it?" "It was," she admitted, running a hand through her hair. "It is, but Oakhaven Point, you?" He reached for her hand, his thumb tracing the sea glass on her ring. "Your art needs to be seen. You need to share your vision with the world. I would never ask you to give that up." A shadow of old loneliness flickered in his eyes, quickly masked. "Go, explore this opportunity, see where it leads." His selfless encouragement, though deeply touching, only intensified her internal conflict. Could she truly leave Oakhaven Point, even for a short time? Had she truly changed, or was the call of the urban art world still too strong to resist? With a heavy heart, but a sense of purpose, Clara accepted the invitation. She would go for a month, for the exhibition and the initial flurry of meetings. She packed her bags, a familiar ritual that usually brought a thrill of anticipation, but this time it was tinged with a profound sadness. Leaving Elias, even temporarily, felt like leaving a part of herself behind. The goodbye was difficult. Elias held her tight on the small Oakhaven Point ferry, his embrace a silent promise of his unwavering presence. "The light will be here," he whispered, kissing her forehead. Always. New York City was a dizzying assault on her senses. The relentless noise, the towering concrete canyons, the frantic pace. It was everything she had once craved. The gallery buzzed with energy, the opening night a triumph. Her Oak Haven Point series, painted with the raw emotion and deep connection she had found, was a sensation. Critics praised her unique perspective, her ability to capture the soul of a place. She was celebrated, interviewed, courted by collectors. Yet, amidst the flashing lights and effusive praise, a quiet ache began to grow within her. The city, for all its glitter, felt hollow. The faces around her, though admiring, lacked the genuine warmth of Mrs. Gable's smile, the knowing nod of Captain Davies. She missed the salty air, the cry of gulls, the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore. Most of all, she missed Elias. She missed his quiet strength, the comforting weight of his hand in hers, the silent understanding in his eyes. One evening, after another successful, yet ultimately unsatisfying, gallery event, Clara found herself standing on a high-rise balcony, looking out at the glittering, indifferent sprawl of the city. There were a million lights, but none of them held the steady, unwavering warmth of the Oak Haven Point lighthouse. She pulled out her phone, looking at a photo of Elias, standing by the powerful beam, his silhouette strong and true. It was then, under the artificial glare of 1,000 city lights, that she understood. Her art had found its voice not in pursuit of external validation, but in the profound connection she had made with a place and a person. The dream of the big city gallery had been her past self's ambition, a pursuit of something she thought she needed. But the true masterpiece of her life wasn't a painting. It was the life she was building with Elias, rooted in the genuine, unwavering light of Oak Haven Point. She didn't need to choose between her art and her love. Her love was her art. It infused every brushstroke, every color, every story she told on canvas. And she could bring that art, that story, to the world, without sacrificing her home. The next morning, Clara called the gallery director. She thanked them for the incredible opportunity, but explained, with a newfound clarity and peace, that she wouldn't be extending her stay. She would return to Oak Haven Point. She would continue to paint, to create, to share her vision, but on her own terms, from the heart of her home. The journey back to Oak Haven Point felt like coming home in the deepest sense. As the ferry approached the familiar silhouette of the lighthouse, a wave of profound relief washed over her. And there, waiting on the small dock, was Elias, his tall frame unmistakable against the backdrop of the sea. She ran into his arms, burying her face in his shoulder, inhaling the comforting scent of salt and him. "I missed you," she murmured, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I missed home." He held her tight, a silent embrace that spoke volumes. "Welcome home, my light," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Okay." Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, held just outside the lighthouse keeper's cottage on a sun-drenched autumn afternoon. The only guests were the cherished residents of Oak Haven Point, Mrs. Gable beaming with pride, Captain Davies, looking surprisingly dapper in his best suit, a handful of fishermen and shopkeepers, their faces etched with the wisdom of the sea. Clara wore a simple flowing gown the color of seafoam, her hair adorned with wildflowers gathered from the cliffs. Elias, in his crisp uniform, looked more handsome than she had ever seen him, his eyes filled with an abiding love as she walked towards him. They exchanged vows under the vast open sky. The rhythmic thrum of the lighthouse lends a gentle counterpoint to their promises. Elias spoke of steadfastness, of the enduring power of love that guides one through any storm. Clara spoke of finding her true north, of the unexpected joy of planting roots in the most beautiful, luminous place she had ever known, with the man who had shown her what true light meant. The sea glass ring, now complemented by a simple silver wedding band, sparkled on her finger. They sealed their vows with a kiss that was both a culmination and a beginning, a promise whispered on the salty breeze and carried out to sea. Years flowed by, like the tides, each bringing new depths to their love. Clara's studio became a hub of creativity, her canvases depicting the ever-unfolding story of Oak Haven Point and the profound beauty she found in its constancy. Her work continued to be exhibited, reaching audiences far and wide, but always, her heart remained rooted. She found innovative ways to share her art, creating virtual tours of her studio, teaching online workshops, and collaborating with local artisans, bringing the spirit of Oak Haven Point to the world, rather than chasing the world away from it. Elias continued his watch, the lighthouse a steady pulse against the horizon, but now he was never truly alone. Clara's presence filled the cottage with warmth, laughter, and the gentle scent of paint. They raised a family together, their children's laughter echoing through the sturdy walls of the keeper's cottage, their small hands helping Elias polish the brass, and Clara mix her paints. On clear nights, they would often stand together, Clara leaning against Elias, their children nestled between them, watching the powerful beam sweep across the dark ocean. "Look," Elias would say, pointing to the rhythmic flash. "Always there, always guiding." Clara would smile, her hand finding his. The light of Oakhaven Point, once a symbol of solitude, was now a testament to enduring love, to the courage of stepping into the unknown, and to the profound beauty of finding home not just in a place, but in the heart of another. Her own story, intertwined with the enduring light of Oakhaven Point and the quiet strength of Elias, had not just begun to shine. It had become a beacon, bright and unwavering, for all who dared to believe in the limitless power of love. And in that radiant glow, Clara knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be forever.